Trainer Kenny McPeak and his champion horses are now a part of Morningline. With Morningline, I don't just watch the race, I invest in champions. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morningline, own the game.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside Ashley Mailloux, producer Lucia helping us out as we'll head over to Gulfstream Park. We're going to preview race 9 on Saturday. It's the Sunshine Turf, $75,000 up for grabs. But before we get over to Gulfstream Park for our preview, Ashley, I know a secret. There's a private SEC regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade interest in racing's biggest stars. You're going to hear about a new sponsor in the coming months of Daily Racing Form videos, and that's morningline.io. Torpedo Anna, Derby Hopeful, Blackout Time. You can be part of championship bloodlines. Visit morningline.io. You can buy, sell, trade, and own the game. You'll find out more about that in the coming months. Ashley, let's dive on into our preview here of the Sunshine Turf over at Gulfstream Park. I thought this was a really fun race to handicap. Lots of directions to go. You have a horse like Echo Lane, who's been really good in spots like this. Echo Lane just won the claiming crown over at Churchill Downs a couple months back. But, I mean, going through the field, you can look at a horse like Seminole Chief, who's been facing tougher company and is now dropping in class. Neoequos was entered last week, scratched, and will be rerouted for this spot. Horse like Tank to the outside. Very, very logical. I mean, I felt like you could go in a lot of different directions here.
Yeah, and I think sort of the fun here, handicapping without the morning line, which I'm a big proponent for, right? I don't like handicapping with the line because I do think it sometimes skews one's brain. Maybe I'm not strong enough to not let it do that in Gino, but I really don't know how it's going to come up on the morning line. I don't know how the race is going to be played. So I looked at the race, blank slate. I agree with you. It's wide open. And I'm hoping the horses that I like, or at least my top selection, who we'll get to at the end, I'm hoping this horse is a good price in here. And I think he might.
One of the things about Gulfstream Park and Santa Anita currently is they draw the races really early for their cards. So you were talking about, you can handicap these races early on. I love doing what you just said. I love to handicap the race without the odds. You don't get sort of swayed a little bit. Then you come back when the morning line is out and you can kind of really look and readjust if you have to. Let's take a look at how the Timeform US Pace Projector will set this race up. Neoequos is really quick, Ashley. And from a class standpoint, I mean, he's faced top tier company. You look at the race where he's third behind Tapan Street and Sovereignty. That race looks pretty good on paper right now when you look back. But the issue with Neoequos, most of his best races have been going shorter. In fact, all 3 of his wins are sprinting.
I think for me, the bigger issue is the surface change. He's not tried the turf. I know from a mare standpoint, we'll talk about it more. Yeah, turf should be fine. You mentioned, as of recent times, he's been on the sprinting campaign. He started a sprinter. He still has some races like the Fountain of Youth, right? Or even the Florida Derby that I still think he can go long. But the turf, it kind of comes up here. I know he was entered in a spot, I believe, a week ago at Gulfstream Park. They didn't opt him there. Now they're trying the turf. It just seems a little odd.
Let's meet the field here. Florida breds going 1 mile and a 16th in the Sunshine Turf, 75 grand up for grabs. Scarecrow will kick things off. And actually, I mean, you look at his overall form, it's not bad. There's a race in the Pulpit when he didn't really fire that day. He had a bad start and he was just way, way out of it. Everything else is good. Lightly raced with upside. He's now a 4-year-old. The biggest concern is we haven't seen him in almost a year. So this is going to be quite a bit of a layoff for this guy who has not raced since February 6th of 2025.
Yeah, it's a long layoff. And, we saw him sort of late in 2024 and really didn't see him much last year as a 3-year-old. But I will say, it's not going to be his workout tab that's going to catch your eye. It's going to be that kind of model of consistency that he is. I actually thought that replay we just saw, there wasn't a ton of pace in there. I mean, to go 48.5 on the turf course at Gulfstream Park, to still be able to close like that, I thought it was pretty strong. I like that he came back with a win. I know it was a different surface, but he seems a little handy to me. If you want to call it his bad race, it was the Pulpit. Look who won it, Nibago, who we know what he's gone on to do and what they sort of did with him and put him in some tough spots. I find him really intriguing. Edgar Zaya sticks with him, which is also interesting, knowing that some of these outfits, as we get through this field, he typically rides for, and he sticks with this guy.
Two of the three races on the grass are very good. I mentioned the layoff is the concern, but you want to dive into the statistics a little bit. The barn is 13 for 45, 29% with a $2.89 ROI after a plus 180 day layoff. They're super capable of getting a horse ready to rock off this long layoff. And while this is a competitive group, there's no monster in here that scares the heck out of you. It's just a lot of solid horses in here. Interesting to see if Scarecrow has grown up a little bit over the last year. We moved to Classic, of course. Stakes winner on the turf, gets back in with Florida breds, but he has to deal with horses who have been out finishing him recently. You see Brawn, Tank, Scarecrow, Neoequos. Those are all horses who have beat him recently. He's going to have to turn the tables on all of them.
He is. And it's kind of an interesting horse. I think when you look at Patrick Biancone and you look at his, say, body of work when he's kind of putting these horses in stakes races, I find it really intriguing. When we look at non-graded stakes races the past year, 36%. I mean, you can kind of think about some of these horses that they've had. How Diva, Layabout, Beach Gold. They've had horses that have been able to fire, and that's way higher than what they've done in the last year as a win percentage as a whole. So I find him a little sneaky from that angle. I just don't know what to do with him in the sense that Gina, like, they bounce him around surfaces a lot. And maybe that's just, I guess, the beauty of having a Florida bred and being down there. But a lot of these are overnight handicaps. It's not like he's been in those Florida restricted races as of late. So that's a little tough for me. With that said, though, at his best, I think he could get a piece in here.
Yeah, just from a class standpoint, he's facing Skippy Longstocking last time out. He'll be one of the favorites in the Pegasus World Cup next weekend. We move to Echo Lane. Look at his last 11 races. 5 wins, a second, 3 thirds, and 2 close fourths. Like, he just shows up and fires every single time. He's proven at Gulfstream Park. He loves this trip. One thing that I think is maybe his biggest attribute, Ashley, is his running style, because he just puts himself in the race. He doesn't get the lead, but he sits just behind the leaders. He can get the jump on the deep closers. He's just a really solid horse.
He is. It's funny. Claimed it for $25,000, final start of 2023, and then look at his earnings last year and the year before, over $500,000. So a really, fruitful claim that's done well. I agree with you in terms of, he's sort of runs from wherever he is, but typically he's getting that same sort of trip, 2 to 3 lengths off of it early, sitting in 3rd or 4th, maybe a little bit closer. And the one thing I do wonder about is how he's going to do returning to Gulfstream Park. I think some of those races, they've gone a little bit quicker, and so he's had to roll a little further from off of it, and maybe that works slightly against him. But I just think, as you've talked about, his consistency and sort of the horses that he's faced in some of those last few, they're not stakes races, but some of those horses I would argue are borderline stakes horses. So this is a perfect spot for him.
Seminole Chief is next up. He's a multiple stakes winner. He's beaten Florida breds. He's beaten Open Company. He traded decisions with Ben Tornado early on in his career. And if you're going through his entire career, I mean, you can make a few excuses for some of the poor performances. You look at the Withers, and maybe he was just in too tough, and that was on a sloppy track. You look at the Shoemaker Mile and the Wise Dan, probably in a little bit too tough. Other than that, he pretty much shows up and fires almost every single time. And you were kind of hitting on this earlier. He's been facing Open Company graded stakes horses, and now he's going to be moving in with Florida breds. I think one of the issues would be just trip, because he can sit a little off the pace, but sometimes he gets caught up early on. If he works out that trip where he can sit 2 or 3 lengths off, it may be very interesting in here from a class standpoint. How do you feel about Seminole Chief?
He's like so many in here where there are races that you can go back to and you go, I can see him getting a piece. I could see him maybe winning if you really like him in here. I think one of my concerns is sort of what you talked about. Does he get himself in a pace battle? Because some of his good races, he's been close to it. And then other races, I mean, the Wise Dan, I'm just going to draw a line through and just say those horses are just too tough for him. And maybe he'll be better now second off the layoff. I'm just concerned he's going to be too involved early based on some of his races. But I think on a positive note, which I think is a huge selling feature, look who's going to climb aboard him for the first time, Johnny V. Maybe just a rider change, no disrespect to the other riders that have been aboard him. Maybe he'll be able to pilot a better trip for him and, maybe get him able to settle a little bit more early.
Second start back after the 6-month break, lost to a horse named One Stripe, who was actually dropping out of the Breeders' Cup and the Woodbine Mile, and a horse who won with a 94 Beyer speed figure that day. So this probably is some class relief for him as we move to Mr. Abarrio. He was well behind Echo Lane in the Claiming Crown, and you're just kind of comparing those two. He was 17-1 in the same race that Echo Lane was 5-2. So he's got to improve and turn the tables on that one, along with Adios Cole, Amnestic. So again, he sees some of those rivals in the running lines that he's just going to have to improve on.
He's going to need to improve. I kind of look at his races. He was able to win last year, at Gulfstream going 7.5, but he was only in for 25. And then Colonial was really good to him. His other 2 wins both came at Colonial, mile and an eighth, one with him with a little bit of a give to the ground. But I don't know. Kind of going through this field, this is where I start to think like this is a horse that for me, I'm not super intrigued by. I know he's consistent. He fires races, but I'm concerned here. You talked about a couple of horses. Look through the bold. He's not beating these horses when he's, meeting them. And it's happened a couple of times now.
We move to Adios Cole. He's going to put 2 races together. I always think that's a positive for horses like this who you can see run and then have layoff lines. He's stakes placed. He was 6 of 8 in this race last year. I thought he was a tricky read too, Ashley. Just 4 races in 2025. He did lose to a gate to wire winner last time out. I kind of went back and forth with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at his race at Del Mar back in July, it really stands out. He has a big price. He gets a career best buyer, but then he goes to the shelf for a little bit, which I guess I understand. You're shipping back, right? And the Walensky's, they've been doing this for the last couple of years. I think a big draw has also been kind of the claiming program and the ship in your win bonuses that Del Mar offers. So maybe I'm not that worried that we don't see him from July to October, but then he goes on the shelf again. And I felt like that return, you would have liked to see him race a little bit closer than 9 weeks. And that's my concern with him. He just really hasn't been able to string races together.
We move to our superhero, lightly raced 4-year-old, looking for the 3rd victory in a row. He likes Gulfstream. Mark Cassie's had a very nice start to the meeting over there. The main concern is both his wins are on the lead. And if you look at the rest of this field, to his outside, Neoequos, Tank. Then you have horses like Brawn, Iron Hand, Seminole Chief, who we've been talking about, who all could be forward. So I'm just trying to project if he gets the type of trip in this race that he may need to win.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at his most recent effort. You talked about the main gate to wire wins. I will say I like that he's been able to improve almost with every start. I mean, besides his top 2, which maybe you don't read into the buyer on debut as much, but he wins here. It says 3/4 of length, and the line says, inside kept safe driving. He's got enough here. It's not like he is like grasping for the finish line at this point. I think he does it comfortably. Was it obviously in a romp? No, but I thought it was a good effort. It was against the Florida breds. I think kind of, you mentioned the barn's doing well. Have some confidence. I think if you're going to try stakes competition, this isn't a bad spot to do it, especially with the timing of the race coming, 5.5 weeks after that most recent win.
These are the types of horses as a handicapper that I have a tricky time with because I like him on paper, but I don't know if the race sets up for him running style wise, right? So you go back and forth. But what I usually do is I let price dictate how I will use a horse like this. And if he floats up a little bit, he's absolutely the type of horse. So I'm including in a pick 4 or a pick 5. We move to Neoequos, who seems like the class of the field. I mean, you look at the Florida Derby last year and the Fountain of Youth. He's 3rd in both of those races. They take a shot in the Kentucky Derby and the Woody Stevens. Those races are a little bit too tough. Then he's able to kind of cut back and drop in class a little bit, and he gets some confidence back, getting a victory in the Jersey Shore over at Monmouth Park. So he hasn't raced since September. We're talking about 4 months off now. I'd imagine he'll be one of the quicker horses in here stretching out. He's a real, another one that's a tough read because I think class-wise, he definitely towers over this field, but surface is brand new and he hasn't won going long. So he does have to check those boxes.
He does. I guess from a pedigree standpoint, I mentioned it. The mare, she ran well on synthetic surfaces, turf, woodbine. We're fine there, I guess, right? In theory, if you want to apply that. Look at the siblings. Some of them have fared fine on the surfaces as well, but he's been strictly dirt to this point. And, Steffi Joseph Jr., when he pull his stats, they're very, very strong across the board. But I just thought this was an interesting one. First time turf, non-graded stakes. That's exactly what's going on here with Neoequos. The last 5 years, he's 2 for 23. He's 9%. He's 35% in the money. And you looked at some of the names that he's tried it with, say in 2025. Holland Ice, who we're thinking, Rich's Arkansas bred, I believe, runner of all time. She was 2nd. But then you go through others. Ultimate Authority, 7th. Roar the Beast, 10th. They were big prices as well. So I don't know. Stats just inform me a little bit. For me, do I think he has the potential to be overbet here just because of the horses he's faced on the dirt? I think that's a really good possibility. And the fact that he didn't run well last time out, they put him in a different race. They're coming here. If he wins, am I shocked? No, but I think it's going to be a short price. And I just don't see it as much with other horses. I think there are other horses that are going to offer better value that I simply find more intriguing.
And another point we keep talking about, it feels like they could be going really quick early in this race. And if that's the case, that may also not be easy for him if he has 2 or 3 other horses up front keeping him
Mhm.
company or making him work a little harder than he would want to go early on in this race. We move to Iron Hand. I think I'm going to probably watch one from him. He had won 4 in a row before stepping up into stakes company, was third in that stakes race in August over at Gulfstream Park in the Bears Den. Easy toss on the soft turf last time out, but that's back in September. So we haven't seen him since then.
Yeah, it's a little tough. I don't want to be critical of him. I've been a little critical of Neoequos. Now we go to Iron Hand. You got 2 turf tries. You haven't won either of them. It almost seems like in those races, he's at least in the one at Gulfstream, right? The Bears Den, they went a lot quicker than his Tapeta races at Gulfstream, and he just didn't have enough. It wasn't a bad race, though. And then they try him at Colonial. I'll give him a pass, not just because it's a grade 3, soft ground, and some horses just absolutely hate it. So he's not impossible here. I just don't necessarily love that the races that he's won, they've been on the Tapeta. They haven't been stakes, and they've gone 49, 49-2, and 50-1 Gino. It's just a tough sell for me.
We move to Brawn. He has 3 wins, maiden win in the debut, but his other 2 are pretty much on the lead. And I don't know if he's the quickest in here. He's drawn to the outside. Does he get the setup in this race, though, Ashley?
I don't know about that. I feel like the problem I have with him, he sort of chases in vain, and then he just doesn't have anything left, say the final 16th. If he was making up some ground there and he was getting closer, I'd like him more. I think they're kind of spotting him well in the fact that he's been in these overnight handicaps for 100,000 that come here, but he is 0 for 9 on the turf, and that is also another one where it's tough sell. But his buyers, they're not hugely different on the
No.
grass and the Tapeta, but they are a little bit better.
We move to Tank. He's a multiple stakes winner. He was actually 4th in the Grade 1 Belmont Derby. When you look back at that race, it looks really good on paper behind some of the horses who were in front of him. Now he moves in with Florida breds. Didn't really fire all that much in August and September before the layoff, but he came back off the layoff with a pretty good third. Might have needed the race. He was sitting second. He made an early move from the outside to the lead. He opened up 2, and he just tired late. He seems like he's trending in the right direction. I think you can probably excuse the races that he didn't really fire last year. And now second start back, first start of this year. I see some positives for him.
Yeah, I almost hope for him that Javier, when they break from the gate, he's sharp and he gets into a good position, but he's not on the lead. I know they have sent him in some of his races, and he's been able to win gate to wire, won the stakes race back in June. But it's the races that I go before that, the English Channel and that sophomore turf event at Tampa for the Florida breds. I like when he has a target and he's able to just settle a little bit. And I think if you think he can do that in here, that would be my selling point on him. And the fact that the barn, you mentioned Mark Casse doing really well. Look at Carlos Davis's numbers. I mean, 31 for Carlos David right now in terms of win percentage.
We round things out with Amnestic, who's a Florida bred stakes winner, but just 3 for 37 lifetime. And in the last 4 races, just not really close. Was third in this race last year. That was when it was on the synthetic, and just seems like a horse who is a little better on the synthetic overall.
Yeah, he does. And I think my concern with him is, he had some time off between Gulfstream and Colonial from the end of March to, early August. Put him in the Presque Isle Downs mile, which you can look at the pace in there. It wasn't quick. They tried him in an overnight handicap, and then you see him. He's in for the tag, and then they drop him again. So to me, the connections weren't afraid to lose him last time out. And he was ice cold in that race once again, even on that drop down. He was 10-1 in there.
Let's round things out in the Sunshine Turf and move to selections. I did think there were a lot of ways you can go in here, Ashley, and you're going to go with Scarecrow. Talk us through your top 4.
Well, I think first off, I throw out Neoequos. I mean, don't get me wrong. He probably is good enough to get a piece in here, but I don't know. I have question marks around him, and there's so many horses that I respect in the Saffie Joseph Jr. barn. He's one of them, but I would prefer to see him on dirt personally. So he obviously could win this. As you mentioned, he's probably the class of the field based on who he's faced. But I thought Scarecrow was really intriguing. You have to be able to kind of look past the fact that we haven't seen him in just over 11 months. You have to be able to accept that. But I looked at his races. He seemed to be improving with his last 2. You talked about it, the stat for the barn off the long layoffs, the selling point. I think he could get the right trip in here. I know sometimes he's been shuffled a little far back. I just hope in here, Gino, that the rail draw, that he's mid-pack, the pace is honest or hopefully quick, and he's rolling late.
What's always interesting about a horse like Scarecrow, too, is we talk about the long layoff kind of like it's a negative always, but last time we saw him was early in his 3-year-old season. He might be a totally different, mature, grown up, developed horse by now. And so, thinking about when the layoffs hit a lot of the time, that's during the maturity and the development stage. So he's a really interesting horse. Ashley has him on top 1-3-7-4 for Ashley, 4-3-8-11 for me. However you play them, we wish you the best of luck.